Al-Qaeda's first mention in the international press was on the 30th of May 1993, in a report by Agence France Presse. They spelled Al-Qaeda with a K. A U.S. State Department press release on the 14th of August 1996 got very close, spelling Al-Qaeda Q-A-I-D-A, but no H. The now standard spelling was used by the FBI on Osama bin Laden's 10 Most Wanted poster, published the 7th of June 1999. But I don't think these were spelling mistakes. This was clumsy spycraft, fake news and misdirection spread by US and European intelligence agencies through complicit journalists and media outlets. But those spelling mistakes cost people their lives. The 224 murdered and over 4,500 injured on the 7th of August 1998 by the attacks on the US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. The 17 killed on the USS Cole in Aden Harbor, Yemen on the 12th of October 2000. And the 2,977 murdered in America on 9/11. This is how you spell Al-Qaeda, as seen on the sign outside Al-Qaeda town in Yemen, and how it is spelled on Google Earth. Al-Qaeda town is the true origin of the name Al-Qaeda. How do I know? Because I've been there. It's where Al-Qaeda tried to recruit me on the 26th of September 1997, on the last day of a business trip to a factory in Taiz, 17 miles south of Al-Qaeda town. It was Mohammed who took me to Al-Qaeda town, or near to it anyway. He'd broken the silence about 20 minutes into our journey by announcing that he was taking me to a meeting. We were already running an hour late for my flight, so I protested, "No, we'll miss my flight." Mohammed looked at me and said, "The plane will wait for you," before turning right onto this dust track. We left the main track and Mohammed grinned at me as we drove cross-country before turning into this narrow gap between the trees. Mohammed parked in the shade, marked by an X, and had got out before I could say a word. There were two men waiting in front, watching me. The closest gestured for me to get out of the Jeep, which I did. Mohammed was nowhere to be seen. The man who'd coaxed me out now guided me to this room. About 5 or 10 minutes later, approximately 10 men came in, most of them in their 20s I'd guess. The eldest who sat beside me at the head of the table was perhaps 10 or 20 years older. They all appeared to be Arabian or South Asian, and their practical dress reminded me of the 1980s Afghan Mujahideen, although they had no weapons or military kit on show. I now think this was a final stage of the interview process that had started a few days earlier in the Yempac factory, but here it felt more like a kidnapping and I just wanted out. Suffice to say, I didn't join Al-Qaeda and was back in the Jeep on my way to Sanaa airport within 10 minutes of the meeting beginning. I had a different driver as there was still no sign of Mohammed, my customer's general manager, who'd abandoned me there. But true to Mohammed's word, my flight to Paris was waiting for me. I was whisked through an empty airport like a VIP and was the last to board the plane. The door closed as soon as I got on and we were airborne within a few minutes. The day before I visited Al-Qaeda, the chief had set up an evening meeting for me with Yousef. Unbeknown to me, this was part of the recruitment process. Yousef was vetting me before the two meetings they already had planned for the next day. Interestingly, Yousef is a facial recognition match for Yemeni 9/11 plotter Ramzi bin al-Shib. Al-Shib was in Yemen in 1997, returning to Germany in November. I think they may be brothers or cousins. The next morning, just before Mohammed took me to Al-Qaeda, the chief Saeed al-Rabaidi introduced me to the engineer, and I already knew the factory mechanic Dino. I asked why I'd not been introduced to the engineer before, and the chief replied, "He's working on other projects." This passport photo-sized image is the only copy I have left. but I have still been able to determine the engineer and Dino are Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ahmed Al-Darbi. KSM was wearing 3 or 4-inch high platform shoes. I'm not 100% sure of Mohammed's last name, but it seems very likely he's the Mohammed A. Salem noted as the general manager at P.O. Box 5302 by the U.S. Department of State in Washington. Mohammed A. Salem was listed as a contact point for the supply of industrial quantities of a host of chemicals, specifically toluene, sulfur, nitric acid and sodium sulfate, the key ingredients needed to make TNT explosives, a lot of which was used 2 years later in the 1998 embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. It is highly likely Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's terror cell made the TNT in the Yemen front company in Taiz, using the Hayel Saeed Anam logistic network, a supply of willing martyrs from Al-Qaeda, and KSM's technical expertise. I believe P.O. Box 5302 became the headquarters of a new terrorist nexus, and this is not the first suspicion cast on the Hayel Saeed Anam Group. In 1982 the future chairman gave his power of attorney to a known terrorist financier. In 1984 that power of attorney was used to open a Swiss shell company called MEGA. After 9/11 the United Nations and US Treasury designated MEGA as a financier of terrorism, saying it was a hub of Al-Qaeda finance, a terrorist chamber of commerce. What happened to those top-level terrorism financiers? Nothing. Designated in 2002 and let off in 2007, after saying, "Sorry, we forgot, won't do it again." In 1997 3 members of the Hayel Saeed family became directors of a Cayman Islands shell company. One of them using the HSA Group headquarters address P.O. Box 5302 to register his interest. Given my 1997 meeting with KSM at P.O. Box 5302, I can confidently say those Cayman Islands investments were terrorist financing linked to. This online company listing for Yemen notes P.O. Box 5302 as its registered address. And this share certificate for the Tadhaman International Islamic Bank also notes the P.O. Box 5302 address for shareholder Ali Mohammed Saeed. A 2016 Forbes article stated Tadhaman International Islamic Bank was one of only 3 banks still providing financial services in areas of Yemen controlled by Daesh. What other links does HSA have? Established in British-occupied Aden in 1938, in 1977 they opened their first London office called Long Gulf Trading, located near Regent's Park. Long Gulf Trading's chairman is Dinam Abdul Saeed, who is also an honorary vice president of the well-connected British Yemeni Society, which was established in 1993, the same year my employer sold their first machine to the HSA Group in Yemen. They got a Queen's Award for Export Achievement in 1995 off of the back of that sale, and consider the influence HSA Group brought with its 1997 investments in Britain, Cayman Islands directors and starting CPAC, Britain's largest cardboard packaging manufacturer. The HSA Group also has massive investments in Indonesia, where they're considered the largest palm oil player, accused by some of underhand business practices and land clearance there. HSA is a massive investor in Malaysia too, establishing a new company Pacific Interlink in Kuala Lumpur in 1988. Around the same time several Al-Qaeda affiliates began establishing themselves in Southeast Asia, specifically Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines. There'll be more about them later. Fox News accused HSA of terrorism funding links in this 2004 article that also accused Pacific Interlink of price skimming, profiteering, off the back of the 1990s, UN-managed, Iraqi oil for food program. And so it was surprising to see the United Nations working with the HSA Group again on another humanitarian program in 2020, this time in Yemen and in conjunction with the World Health Organization, the World Food Programme and multinational businesses Unilever and Tetra Pak. So who should have known about the HSA Group, Al-Qaeda town, and a new paradigm of global terrorism? Everyone. According to former US Ambassador Barbara Bodine, everyone knew about Al-Qaeda in 1990s Yemen. She described their presence there as warehousing foreign nationals in peripheral areas. The locals in Taiz called the HSA Group HQ the foreigners' compound, because there were so many Pakistani employees, plus the flow of other visitors, such as me and an Italian technician on site that week. It isn't rocket science. A multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate, intimately tied to the British establishment, has a long history of financing international terrorism, and is headquartered 17 miles south of a town called Al-Qaeda. When HSA started importing explosive chemicals in 1996, every light on the intel agency's dashboard should have been flashing red, but they weren't. In fact, it was the US Embassy Yemen that was helping the HSA Group to source those explosive chemicals, and through the US Department of State as an export opportunity. We know the CIA was in Yemen in the 1990s because Billy Waugh, a US Special Forces veteran, admits training Al-Qaeda operatives in 1990s Yemen, on contract from the CIA of course. And here's where my story takes a bizarre turn, towards my work colleague from 1988 to 1997, Dave Dean. Dean was the US sales agent for my British employer. I believe Dave set up the machine sale for KSM's front company in Yemen by persuading the Long Gulf executives to buy the machinery at an industry exhibition in April 1997 Chicago. It was a big event, and we celebrated. At the end of the week we had drinks with a guy called Baron in Dean's bar, the Skybox, an odd place tucked away in Chicago O'Hare Airport's cargo handling area. Dean's military service in Vietnam was known by all, but little talked of all the same. He did tell me his career ended suddenly with a parachute training accident in Vietnam, soon after the 1969 battle for Hill 937. He said he spent the rest of the war running a go-go bar in Angeles City in the Philippines, just outside the US Air Force's massive Clark Air Base. The only such parachute training that injured Dean in Vietnam in 1970-71 was run by Billy Waugh of the Special Forces Studies and Observations Group, also known as MAC-VSOG. I'd found the link between my work colleague Dave Dean and the US Special Forces legend who admits training Al-Qaeda operators in 1990s Yemen, Billy Waugh. And then I remembered his sales agency, Dean Printing Systems. It traded in print industry chemicals, toluene and the like, and so it is entirely plausible that Dean supplied the chemicals the US Embassy had sourced via the Department of State, on behalf of the HSA Group, who were hosting Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's terror cell at the same address a year later. Dean and Waugh were just operators, men with a certain set of skills and some bitterness from their experiences in Vietnam, but they were just moving parts in someone else's grand plans. So, that's it. The mystery of Al-Qaeda's been solved. It was a camp in Yemen by Al-Qaeda town, misspelled for the last 30 years by intelligence agencies determined to hide Al-Qaeda's true origin, and their own complicity with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's terrorist cell. Coming next, Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden.